so using the Malfoys as examples of this. Now, I am going to ask this question, and this panel is built for this specific event, so it's fair. It's a tongue-in-cheek question, but has anyone here not read the Harry Potter books? Wow, the fact that that was simultaneous was really amazing.
Urban meant like today.
Oh,
yeah. I was trying to cram them in.
Yeah, you only got halfway through 4.
Exactly. I wonder what happens later.
Exactly. How many people know somebody who loves the Harry Potter movies but hasn't read the books? I mean, people or likes them, and I do know people who do love. They say I love Harry Potter, but they have never experienced the books, or they've picked up half the Sorcerer's Stone and read the half of the book. Everyone has looks like they're smelling something kind of bad, which I totally understand because the books are beautiful. But to movie-only people, the films are their primary source, not their only source of interacting with Harry Potter. That is their understanding of canon is the films. And so an example of this, something I always think about, is in the seven-part one, when they cut the Dursleys, when they cut large portions of the Dursleys goodbye from the films. I mean, it's upsetting the book fans for obvious reasons because it's so emotionally resonant, but it's also a huge disservice to film fans because their first interaction with Harry Potter, when you think of the larger group of people who watched those films, the parents of kids who liked the books, the guy who went on a first date in 2001, when you think of just everyone who is in the net of a Harry Potter fan, they experienced the Dursleys before they experienced almost all of Harry Potter, of the wizarding world itself. And they have, other than Harry, it's Harry and the Dursleys, and Dumbledore, and Minerva, McGonagall briefly, but the Dursleys are a major point of that film, and so they are going to be what those people remember 10 years down the line. They're going to remember those early Sorcerer's Stone scenes. And with the Dursleys storyline being cut, it's a disservice to film fans because that actually will resonate with them. They do remember that. It is important for those viewers to have that storyline wrap up because that is going to matter to them more than who Luna Lovegood ends up with. It's something that they really have a connection to, even if they don't they don't like the Dursleys, but it's still going to mean something to them in a way that things that mean something, it's going to mean something completely differently than what the key takeaways are for book readers. Movies really inform just more than just, they don't just inform movie fans though. Book fans watching the films at any point in history since they've come out inform the interpretations of the books, even if they absolutely swear otherwise, or they say, oh, I'm canon compliant only, meaning in that sense only the Harry Potter books. But they, I just accidentally completely minimized this anyway. They inform the interpretations, and this is really visible in many ways, especially in transformative works like fan fiction, wizard rock. Fan art, any fan creation, you'll see the trickle down of things that are really prevalent in things from the movies that you might not expect to be in the in fan interpretation, even superseding things that are canonical in the traditional sense. So I did take this apple because I was thinking of Drapple. Of course, people, there are different types of this engagement. There's, of course, tongue-in-cheek or additional engagement, things where, people are holding two things. They're holding canon compliancy, but they're also having fun with the movies and the fact that Draco loves to eat green apples in the films. I don't remember the scene where he's like, Harry, you're such a nerd, and also I love apples. That is so amazing, says Draco. But so for Wizard Rock, there are some film conversant specific songs like Creepy Mustache, Remus and the Lupins, and Professor Lupin Doesn't Have a Mustache by Gadding with Ghouls, are two songs that are just bad that the film, Prisoner of Azkaban gave, Lupin a mustache. I don't know that I really needed to say that. But Dear Michael Gambon by Peeved is another example. I actually had a separate point, and I was like, actually, that song covers it. It's specifically about Goblet of Fire, that song, and he's like, I know I haven't listened to it in a while, but he's like, I know you're a great film actor. What's it going to mean? How do you feel about being known to a generation as a bad Dumbledore? But then there's Zip Me Up and Awkward Hug by the Blibbering Humdingers, which are not complaints. they're not metatextual. Like they're not like they're poking fun at these film moments that are film only. So it is implied that like it's different from the books, because otherwise why are they focusing on it? But they are doing it from within the world of the films, and I think it's important that the Blibbering Humdingers as a band have a different background than a lot of Wizard Rock bands. They have been in fandom spaces since the early 90s and are largely in film spaces and film music, where the approach to songwriting and fan creation is markedly different than a lot of the approach to fan creation from within the Harry Potter community. But again, there's still this tongue-in-cheek nature of that music. It's not meant to be taken seriously as an interpretation of canon. But there are things people really integrate into their perception of canon. So my area of expertise is not the Malfoys. I'm going to be honest. But so my examples, to really show what I mean, and then we're going to get to some Malfoy examples. But when you read fanfic about the Marauders, about Wolfstar and that generation, there are things that are really genuinely integrated into fan work, such as Remus Lupin having scars. I actually asked at my last panel, at the very beginning, asked people to raise their hands if they thought Remus Lupin canonically had scars, because hello?
Hi, gorgeous.
Because almost everyone raised their hand, because it is such a ubiquitous part of the Harry Potter lexicon, pun not intended, that Remus Lupin has scars. Now, he technically, if you put two pieces of canonical information together, he technically also does, but that's not what people are not thinking about how Bill Weasley got scars in 6, and that it's established in that chapter that werewolf scars don't fade, and that Remus Lupin also attacked himself, so you combine that in his scars. But that's not what they're not going through that thought process. They're remembering Alfonso Cuarón's depiction of Remus Lupin in the 3rd film. So other things are in recent years, in the last 4 or 5 years, Remus Lupin using a cane has become very prevalent, which is also from the 3rd film. That's David Thewlis at the end of the movie, and also in the middle. Occasionally you do see fan art with them having mustaches Sirius Black and Remus Thew in the film. And then the one that is canonically different from, all of these can be added to canon, and they are not incongruent with what we know. Although there is an implication. Harry is not so unobservant; he would not notice somebody's distinctive facial scars, But the height difference, and you will see double reactions to it too. You will see people who in the books, when you do some complicated math, you come up to realizing that Sirius is probably the tallest of the Marauders, and that Snape is one of the shorter people from that generation. But in 6, you are going to find 75% of the time Remus Lupin will be much taller than Sirius, which is 100% because of the height difference between Gary Oldman and David Thewlis. David Thewlis being the tallest supporting actor of the films. So I always notice it when I'm reading something, and I always notice when someone really emphatically is the shorter man Remus, and I'm someone is mad, somebody is mad, and they don't have to. I get it. I mean, I have things like that too, but it does make me smile. So that's sort of me establishing some examples I know very well, just to illustrate my point, and then going to the Malfoys. What I really loved about Julie yesterday as a priori in Cantata, in her songs, really gave me some examples of this. She mentioned slick back hair in one of the songs, and that to me is such a film indicator, right? Especially even if something's mentioned once, etc. It's when we think of the early Harry Potter films of Draco, it's that helmet he has on his head. Yeah.
But doesn't his description in the book say sleek blonde hair?
Sleek, but I think she said slick, but I could be wrong. It's okay, I have a second example from her, so which is a more prominent one anyway. What was I going to say? She used the refrain, "Oh, my father will hear about this," which that phrasing is so film. What does he say exactly, Ella?
He says, "This is cervix step. Just wait until I tell my father about this." It's similar, but it's not similar. It's not that specific, iconic phrase.
Yes, and that phrase being so repeated during the early 2000s. My father will hear about this, and hearing that in the song, I was that is so exactly what I mean. Altering for the film version, even if. And if you read a fic that mentions that, and some will do it tongue-in-cheek, but some will do it completely sincerely, they're going to be using more likely, my father will hear about this, and they're not going to be necessarily consciously deciding, I'm picking the film version. And then, so there's also, red hair, hand-me-down robes, you must be a Weasley. The film version is different than the book version, but it's the film version we think about as the more iconic moment. And the film version that's going to be repeated in things. Another example is Narcissa's hair is very different in the book and the film. And
awful.
yeah, and maybe when I walked in and you were wearing that and you were Narcissa, I was like, yes, perfect, because I was like, Narcissa's hair. Well, they've got that like bizarre double wig in the films, but some people,
Cruella hair.
Yeah, the Cruella hair. But some people will love that and repeat it in fics. It really depends on the interpretation. And some people are not going to be, some people haven't read the book in longer than others. Some people will be making that choice consciously. Some won't be. It's really up to what an individual fan does, but also what they've been influenced by and how how what they've been influenced by shapes, their interpretation. I did want to ask here, do people have other ideas or thoughts, examples that you've had of Malfoy-related interpretations that you've seen in fan work? Yes.
I do wonder if, because, and I see this with Snape also, but with Malfoy, a lot of the sort of random, really nasty stuff he does in the books was cut from the films because of time constraints. And I do wonder if that has affected some of the popularity of Draco in fanfic, because they're not necessarily remembering stuff from the books like, that got cut from the films, like the fact that after Harry has to get hospitalized for falling off his broom, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle try to make him do it again. Like, that's, I do think that, like, maybe some of the stuff that got cut from the films make him more popular in fandom.
I think that is such a, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. The one that comes to me is him getting punched by Hermione, because in the books, she slaps him.
Yes.
And it's not like a, like, action hero Lara Croft thing like Emma Watson does with all her characters. Separate point. But yeah, like in the movies, her like big punch has completely entered like the fandom mental image of that scene, when it's supposed to be like an ineffective but furious slap.
That's, yeah, absolutely. The slap versus, every time I read it, I think of the punch. It's like, to me, it's almost difficult to separate from that scene the film version. And to your point, the idea that I think that also gets to really, it's like there are examples that can be easy to point out, but really it's a very complex thing. This interpretive, the mental process of interpretation is a very complex and mostly unconscious thing that people, because a lot of people say I don't like it's despite Tom Felton that I like Draco. I love book Draco. I like book description of Draco, but they might also people have agencies. Some people might be influenced, even though they like book Draco, they might still be influenced by movie Draco. It's a really complex, thing to unpack. We're going to say something else.
Oh, no.
I wasn't.
Well, and just, the whole, I can't remember, the book had to have come out before the final couple of movies were done, but I can't remember what his name, Crabbe/Goyle, the actor got like arrested or something like that. So,
yeah,
all of a sudden, he can't be Draco's best friend anymore, because they had to just like get rid of him. And so that was just like a huge change. It's like, wait, where did, what's his name come in? Yeah. And what, I don't even remember a guy named Blaze, and yeah, just that whole interaction was just kind of weird.
And that goes back to the original Dursley point, where it's like audiences have seen Crabbe and Goyle. It's about what audience. It's about you have to repeat something a lot more in a film for it to stick like it does in a book. And the characters that are in movie one are going to be by far just the characters people remember. They're more likely to remember Crabbe and Goyle than they are going to Mad-Eye Moody. Even though their impact on the story is completely different in scope. And so it does confuse a viewer to have Blaise Zabini replace Crabbe. because they've seen him once in the previous, he's been introduced in the previous film. I think that's a great point. It leads into my next section, really. But I still, I can also come back and we can talk more about, if anyone thinks of anything. I also was wondering, like, how is Pansy Parkinson described in fanfic, right? Because she's played by several actresses. And then it's also, and a lot of times people can also, there could be this conscious decision to depart from the way that the film, which portrays things, which is still an influence from the film. If there was a complete blank slate, people would come up with their own interpretations in a completely different type of canon. But when you've got people doing responses to the film reactions, even in the opposite direction, it's still about what they have seen and what they've, their opposing interpretation. And so another thing, the big thing about the film is really, so one of the things that made me think of this panel is really Jason Isaacs as Lucius Malfoy. So this is not just, he's fantastic, but also he himself was such a large reason for why his portrayal was exactly the way it was. He had such a, whoa. Hey. Hi. He had such a large impact on, sorry, I need to stretch my neck anyway. He had such a large impact on, like, all of the costuming and hair for his role, on so many of the character choices made for his role. It really makes it really tells also that it's not just a director in the audience. It's not just an actor in the audience. It is every part of the filmmaking process, everyone who's involved in it, costumer and set designer and anyone who's holding a boom mic who has said something to, Jason Isaacs that helps him inform that performance. Like, it's part of the creative package that is shown to audiences who come with their own interpretation. And Jason Isaacs really, an alternate title of this panel was going to be, I was kicking Dobby, because that choice, it's not only so iconic as a film choice, but it really informs, Lucius's character in the films, and one of my favorite moments of the film, separate from the books, and I think really gets back to this motif of the way that film viewers deserve to have a good film experience. They don't need, if you're making a film, the thesis is that they don't need to read the book, right? If the point of a film is so that people can go watch it, then they don't need to read it. It's supposed to not be, it's a different medium, And so so many book adaptations fail at that. I think the Harry Potter series is a mixed bag at that, but one of my favorite moments from 7 Part 1 is also when the wand cane, Jason Isaacs' idea, right? So iconic, and I'm sure that's another, it's just hard. I don't want to speak for fanfic, I haven't read it extensively, but I have to imagine that wand cane is everywhere because it's incredible. So it's validating to you, because I know that it is your area of expertise. But that wand cane's everywhere, and in 7-1, when Voldemort breaks it to take Lucius Malfoy's wand, level up, speak of Voldemort, and he shall appear.
That's why you say you know who.
Yes, I forgot about the taboo. When he breaks it, the transfer of power from the early films, when you're watching, and Lucius Malfoy really is the present bad guy, Voldemort's the distant evil, right? And Lucius Malfoy is the one that you think of as the bad guy. I'm sorry. Lucius Malfoy is the one you're thinking of as the bad guy, versus my brain has died. Versus that transfer of power with the wand breaking that cannot be in the books because it's using the wand cane from the films only. And I just think that is such a beautiful example of it. Just you feel it when it happens, and I'm sure film viewers feel it too. It's actually good filmmaking, which I can't say for most of the picture films. But that's just my opinion. Actually, though. But so there are different things, or even an example is I've been seeing Lucius, and many people say Lucius instead, and the film said Lucius. There are other, an insane example, but my favorite one is when Cornelius Fudge says the Wizenagamoth, which is so wrong, but but I hate every correct pronunciation of the Wizenagamoth. The Wizenagamoth, it sounds bad because it's a silly word. and he adds a bunch of syllables in there, but I'm like, go off, King, I don't know. You know, so there are just so many different ways that people incorporate consciously and subconsciously this idea that the film interpretations that they have with the book ones. And I want to ask also, I'm going to reiterate my question from earlier, which is, does anyone have any examples of things from the movie that you see commonly shown in fan work, especially fan fiction?
Okay, I apologize to my lovely, wonderful friend, but he already knows I'm a Snape fan. I'm gonna die because of Alan Rickman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the same thing is true with Lucius. I say Lucius because it makes more sense the way it's spelled. But I think I would bet you that he has so many more fans because he's so sexy. And for that matter, I mean, I think both of them were. You know, the actors totally changed, I think, how people incorporated them into their lives and what they thought of.
And I really appreciate that take, because I think that is so integral to really the reception theory of the films in general, and also this idea that if you think Snape is attractive, that you are a lesser fan, that you are not interpreting correctly.
Oh,
right?
I totally believe you.
Yeah,
but you know, that was the reason that's how I got into him, and then just accept him, and it was so much easier for me to then believe a lot more easily to believe all of the stuff in his past and all of his backstory. Well, of course, you know, he's such a good man, the whole world, you know.
Yeah, and you are not a lesser fan, and you know, like that take that people have is based on something I'm going to get, which is how canon formation and our ideas about what canon means, you know, because the idea that somebody's entry into or the reason for liking a character is based off the films and rather than the books makes them too many people a lesser fan. I see Kevin, and I see from Kevin first, and then.
I think like major change that you see somewhat impacted in fanfic is the roles that the Golden Trio have in the books are so different in how they interact with each other in the movies, and that's really clear. But I think the character who gets treated worst potentially is Ginny Weasley. And there is like a true difference in the sassy, powerful book Ginny versus the movies.
And what were we going to say?
So on the subject of Snape, like the age of the character, because like, you know, growing up, like, you know, I read the books at the same age as Harry was, just like most of us. So adults were old people. Like I didn't have to consider age, but like. Somebody more recently, like more recent years, mentioned that Snape was actually like 20 years younger than Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind, but mathematically it makes sense, but I never considered it because visually Snape was always Alan Rickman, even though I was more book oriented. Like,
and I'm older enough than you that didn't make a difference for me.
But it also really changes when you're 35 versus 50.
Yeah, like the way that you would react to
person.
people.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
Especially being someone in my 30s now and knowing what it's like to be in your 30s.
Right. Ella, you
I was just going to add on to Kevin's point about Ginny, I feel like that particular kind of like movie portrayal of Ginny kind of like inspired this like collective like rejection of a movie interpretation. Like, you know, it's very, you know, even amongst like kind of casual fans, it's very common to hear like, oh, I love Ginny, but I love book Ginny.
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't like. I don't like movie Ginny, whatever. Like, it's kind of like, even amongst people who, you know, aren't super into fandom, like, that's kind of a thing that you hear a lot, and I feel like that's almost like the opposite, like a way that people have just kind of collectively, overall, been like, not only is that not informing my interpretation of canon, but it's like consciously not informing my personal interpretation of canon.
Yes, it is, and it's rare. I know, Charles, you had your hand up, right? I'm going to answer yours, and then say something about that, and then move on.
Oh yeah, no problem. I think with Snape, there's this kind of also element like, if I'm talking to somebody who hasn't read the books and I'm describing Snape as an angry young man, that fits with the book depiction. But I know, like, if people have only watched the movies, they're going to be very confused by that statement because really nothing about Alan Rickman's character or his depiction fits with that. I also think, honestly, that the films, really mostly with Gambon, but, like, I do think that the Gambon portrayal of Dumbledore and the Maggie Smith portrayal of McGonagall have probably contributed to the thing in a lot of fanon where everything Dumbledore does is horrible, everything McGonagall does is great, when really both of them have flaws and good points in the books, and there's certain ways in which Dumbledore is more flawed, but there's also certain things that he does better in terms of how he interacts with the kids than McGonagall does, but I think the films have made it more black and white for people.
I totally get that, and if there had been DumbledoreCon, I would have asked to do 6 panels.
Yeah, no, I was a rookie author, but for Death Eaters in 2 years, we're doing this.
I have a lot of feelings, as anyone who's ever interacted with me knows, about why people hate Dumbledore, but Lori, real fast.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking off of Dumbledore, the whole line of Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Exactly, and that's what that peeved song is about. And the way that hit cultural. Oh, going back to your point, Ella, the way that there are very few things from the books that hit like cultural, like saturation, like that wide net of movie fans and casual book readers, and that is one of them. And another one is Book Ginny, and another one is Oliver Wood memes on TikTok. Because it's something I'm so obsessed with it because it's something that, you know, a lot of people read those books so long ago, but Oliver Wood was so obsessed with Quidditch that it did stick in their mind, right? And they had the film portrayal of Oliver Wood, which is, he's very different. I mean, I love Sean Biggerstaff, he's the first person I ever followed on Twitter, but I don't know why, really. I think I needed Twitter to follow him, but he's completely different. I mean, he's an alien character from Oliver Wood, but Oliver Wood, it was his distinctive trait, and so when people think of Oliver, but they remember, it rises out of the foggy, memory of reading those books, and then something they get to share in, because everyone gets as having that feeling, and so they find it really exciting to share. It's something I think is a very wholesome and very positive trend that really reminds people of this experience they had 15 years ago. I love it, speaking to especially your point about Alan Rickman and the ways that why people fall in love with Harry Potter and how. I want to talk about shifting away from the specifics and talking about understanding of canon. So the traditional canon, the way that the Harry Potter official wiki does it is out of the Star Wars school of canon. Various points in its history. So, for example, the internal Star Wars Holocron continuity database had canon tiers. This was the internal database used by George Lucas films when it was George Lucas films and not Disney. And they had all these tiers, and the top one was G, standing for George Lucas, and then everything below that was how much farther you got from his specific media. And there's this quote by Dan Filoni, who is creative officer of Lucasfilm, and why they've gotten away from that. I mean, other than money, people get into all these debates on what's canon and what's not, and sometimes forget the special nature of telling a good story and creating great characters. And then I tend to look at it a little bit like Arthurian tales, to be honest, and how depending on what version you're reading and translation, they can be wildly different. But Arthur's is usually Arthur and does the thing he's supposed to do. These things remain true, and that's very much folk tale and fairy tale type of ideology. And I think that is a really impactful way to frame that, even though I'm sure I would disagree with many things he's done. So with the Harry Potter wiki, it has 3 tiers. Tier 1, J.K. Rowling. I didn't want to copy everything down. So tier 1 includes the 7 books, but that's not all they include. The wiki explicitly includes anything she has ever said. Tier 1 is the 7 Harry Potter novels, but it is also, the ancillary books like Quidditch Through the Ages coming out. See, personally, that's fine to my personal feelings, right? They came out during the book's publication. They're very much in conversation with the books. But then you've got the few hundred-word, prequel she did for charity. You've got the Daily Prophet newsletters from her website. You've got the 101 famous wizard cards. You've got the Pottermore stuff, of course. I like the Pottermore stuff largely, but it's still HarryPotter.com. Auctions and exhibitions are considered Tier 1 canon. So anything that gets auctioned off. For some reason, Wonderbook Book of Spells, the PS3 move video game, is on here. I guess she must have worked on it personally, you know. Sorry, I once lost a trivia because of a Patronus question from that game, so that was a little bit kind of personal. So you've got Tier 2 based on J.K. Rowling's work, right? Cursed Child. And then you've got the films. You've got Fantastic Beasts. Another million. Apparently Potter, more stuff that she didn't write. But Tier 3 is licensed. Video games, Lego video games, wizard cards that she didn't write, trading games. And the way they interact with each other is that if the Tier 2 or Tier 3 contradicts Tier 1, then they are not canon. If Tier 1, if they do not, then they are also canon. Everything, if they are non-contradictory, they are also canon. And the text of the wiki says, the wiki believes that J.K. Rowling's word is law. Any material she has written or was involved in or has stated is canonical, is the highest level of canonicity. Even the illustrations, drawings, hand lettering, etc. that she created are part of that. The wiki also considers the texts written in their original language, J.K. Rowling's British English, and editions with corrections she approved are the most valuable. So, non-contradicting information again. That is, someone who played a lot of that bad mobile game, Hogwarts Mystery. There's some dumbass shit that happens in there. And when you're reading Charlie Weasley's wiki page, and it's like, you know, he apparated on top of a little old lady doing a shopping book, and then it's like, he would later admit to Jacob Sibley how he'd been sneaking into the Forbidden Forest more often than Bill and befriended a centaur by the name of Torvis. You're like, I don't remember that. I really don't remember when he befriended a centaur named Torvis. And then it doesn't, and then you have to click the like attribution to the bottom to figure out that it's from the fucking Hogwarts Mystery. You know? And when you lay out a wiki like this, it just is like not based on the largest, like how circles of knowledge work, how people interact. It's not based on how we actually interact and think about Harry Potter. Another issue to me is that it explicitly includes any statement made outside the books. Anything, if J.K. Rowling accidentally sneezes a new Harry Potter fact, like, suddenly that is true. And it also, sneezing is not normal. I know what you're thinking.
No, a completely different thing.
Oh, okay.
Do they explicitly say if Tier 1 contradicts Tier 1? Is it the newest contradiction that holds true?
Yes.
Okay. So Dumbledore is still gay, guys.
Dumbledore is still gay.
And they don't have restrooms in Hogwarts. Cool. Two important things.
Correct. Stay tuned. Explicitly includes, you know, that's not, you know, I get, you know, for the wiki, obviously that's true for the wiki. But for ourselves, death of the author is a concept, right? Like, it's not actually, you know, despite what we learn implicitly and explicitly in fandom spaces, it is actually not an uncontroversial idea to accept everything someone ever says as true. You know, and people who say things like, oh, I only treat the 7 books as canon, are kind of treated like, that's kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, what, you're not paying, like, attention? You know, you're not learning the rest of it? It's treated as this either-or thing that it isn't. And then it also explicitly, I hadn't even thought of this, but when it said it explicitly devalues text in other languages, like, this one actually kind of upsets me. Because reception, when you are, you know, an Italian kid reading Harry Potter, the Harry Potter books are the books that you read. Like, what happens in those books are what you read. That is your text. I'm a very big anime fan, and I have a lot of, I'm very passionate about reception theory for dubbed anime and how they're presented through, like, specifically through, like, Cartoon Network. Like, Naruto, the anime, was syndicated very widely on American television in the early 2000s. This is actually largely why Naruto is so big, but it also had one of the first commercially successful and not dog shit dubs. So, and then like they have, you know, these like terms and monikers that you see sometimes in fan fiction that are translations of the original Japanese versions. And to me, my favorite character, you know, my Mike Guy is a character that I love, and the nickname they have for him, that's his nickname to me. It's not the Japanese version because I grew up on the American version. That's the thing that I know. That is true for me. And this idea that other language versions of Harry Potter are not as good as the English edition is to me cultural supremacy. Like it's not really related, but
Lillian, if I can
Yes.
interject. So I sent my first book, Dumbledore, to Steve Vander Ark for a blurb, and his only critique was, but you use the American version. Obviously the British one is supreme, and I was like, but I use the American version. My book is written in American English with the American books for reference. So that is the canon we're working with.
yes, all these canons exist simultaneously.
So Irvin and I had gone to a panel with translators of the books, and I thought that it was fascinating how they did talk about how they did need to change specific things. One example that stuck in my mind was Mirror of Erised, and how in the English, if you reverse it, now my brain just stopped working.
Desire. I show not your face, but your heart's desire.
Exactly. Thank you. But do you remember what the Ukrainian translator was saying? That if you reversed it in Ukrainian, it ended up saying something about a frog. So he was like, that super doesn't work.
Right.
And so he needed to get kind of fun and creative with it to make it have the same idea, but it wasn't the exact literal word-for-word text. Just like how we all know that Tom's full name has to, instead of Marvolo,
Yes.
it's Elvis in the French, to work out to mean the same thing. And so I think that if you're looking at the nitty-gritty details of canon, you do need to identify which source is the official
Identify, but not
source.
not the yes and no. You need to be able to identify, but the official source is up to the interpreter, right? It is Elvis to French people, and it makes us laugh, but that doesn't mean the same. That doesn't have the same interpretation because of the culture that French people are growing up in,
Yeah.
But I think that is a great point in that, they do have to identify, you have to identify differences,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be about what's better, and that is an issue I take with the Harry Potter wiki and the ethos that it represents. And this is related, of course, because of film interpretation, you just, you get this idea that when you enter through films, or you care about films, or you like something about the films, that you have a lesser opinion for it because it's different than the books. Both exist. They are, to me, film, and they are all separate pieces of work. They are not layered on top of each other. They are separate ideas, separate mediums being created for different groups of people. You've got, and they interact, of course. You can't separate them completely, but there is an understanding that they can exist simultaneously as different sources in your mind. I don't incorporate film dialogue in my understanding, in my own mental image of the Harry Potter books, because it's the film, or interactions that are only in the movie. So I have a master's degree in folklore, and so the way that I kind of think about this is folk groups, which are seen as a group of people who have something in common, two or more people who have a trait in common. We are all in this room because we like Harry Potter, right? We are a folk group of fans of Harry Potter. And then within fans of Harry Potter, you get smaller and smaller folk groups, people who are willing to come. We're all in right now. And my idea for canon is really, it's not about the source, it's about the shared circle of knowledge, right? The largest piece of canon, the largest circle is everyone who's ever heard of Harry Potter. The smallest circle is what you believe, and other people, what you believe for your interpretation match with other people who feel the same way. So, we need to just be able to hold, and some of these circles overlap. The films and the books and the video games, they will overlap. But people who are extremely passionate about the modern Marauders circle, that's a very clear, distinct folk group. But there are going to be even folk groups within those circles that are, have different opinions and hold different values about those characters. And that way, it decenters this idea that one person has the ability to change our interpretation, our personal interpretation of the text, and it really allows us to understand each other and interact with each other, being able to really respect each person's understanding and interpretation. And also, what was I going to say? It's in here, I just have to actually find it. It's even if there's something directly contrary to the books, it's of equal value. Yes, thank you. I am actually at the end, believe it or not. Sorry to talk to you guys. But let's see. else did I feel like I had? Yeah. Oh, also remembering that the other circles exist. It's like just because you're in a very small circle, being able to move within different circles of understanding, right? If I go to a Harry Potter trivia, to me, I am now in the circle of like canon means book things from the books, right? Like that is the set of like qualifiers I'm operating under versus when I am thinking about what resonates with me and what feels true and is true to me, and that's such an important distinction. So when it comes to all these differences, when people are writing, Narcissa with different hair, or they're writing Draco, completely influenced by the films versus the books, those interpretations are correct. They're just correct for a certain circle of fans. And I think that's the end. I can do questions for 2 minutes. Does anyone have any questions, or I'm happy to not take questions.
It's not a question, but a comment about the Ginny Weasley movie versus book thing. In a fan fiction sense, Harry is often paired with other people when the fic is written by a movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
A
Ginny
person
doesn't
versus.
get many pairings.
She doesn't because a lot of people who've only seen the movies are like, what is Harry doing with her? There are better options.
Wait, she's a boring. What is this? It's so like basic.
It's a big thing. Like in 2024, Harry and Voldemort was more popular than Harry and Ginny.
Crazy.
Wow,
That's crazy.
I know in fanfic, I love when put outer is mentioned because of change of canon.
Yes.
But
why are we too cool for put outer? Huh?
Right?
Why are we too cool for put outer? Why do we have to be deluminator now?
Yeah, what's wrong with putting out?
My alternate wizard rock name would have been Lux in the put outers.
I'm Lux and I put out.
Yeah, and then I would say I'm Lux and I put out.
Obviously.
I don't know. I'm Dumbledore and I put out. Like, I don't know. But okay. Well, thank you all so much.
Yeah.